and a warm welcome to everyone this afternoon. Very warm welcome. We're just trying to get as many people as possible into today's session. Thank you very much for showing up this afternoon. My name is Adora Ipamesi. I'm the founder of Kendall Consulting, an HR consultancy that focuses on learning and development solutions. Warm welcome to everyone here. And, as we await people to come in for the session, it would be nice to give some, find out who's here. I know we have people from all over the world, and this is obviously a very hot topic at the moment. So warm welcome to everyone as we usher people in this afternoon. So please feel free to use the question and answer, the chat, the question and answer for any questions that you may have throughout this session. And feel free to ask questions, make it as interactive as possible while we continue to expect people in. Lots of people are coming in at the same time. So yes, so good afternoon, everyone. Please tell me where you are joining in from. That would be good to hear from and see where, because I know that we've had a few people from, well, quite a number of people these days. We're getting more popular with our Stay Trendy series of programs. So warm welcome to everyone. Today is a very interesting topic on remote work, something that a lot of us have become used to, or at least if we weren't used to before now, the pandemic definitely has given all of us that experience. So yes, okay, so we have Omomi from Alausa. Anyone from outside Lagos, outside Nigeria, we welcome you in particular. Remote work is very, well, a topic that is also dear to my heart for several reasons. I've been somebody who has enjoyed working remotely for a very long time, for at least, I would say 20 years at different times in my career. I've enjoyed it, I've enjoyed the benefits. I do understand that it's not without its challenges. And then, of course, the pandemic has made it's been much more in use. Not that it wasn't recognized or it wasn't done prior to the pandemic, but it's become much more widespread. So welcome to everyone. Yes, I see lots of people from different parts. So today is quite an interesting one, as one thing what I want to bring everyone up to. This is our Stay Trendy. This is the third series now. We've been doing this for the last couple of months. And what I want us to really look at really is what has happened since the pandemic. For some organizations, remote working was, how did it all start in terms of this widespread manner? Like remote working traditionally was said to be an option for high income earners or people, in maybe more advanced type of roles. And all of a sudden, in 2020, many countries declared lockdown. And as a result, the only people who could actually work were either people, the government encouraged any kind of workers or work that could be done remotely or at home to continue. Otherwise, lots of economies shut down, imagine all that. So the question, what has happened since then? Very interesting for lots of organizations in the sense that, especially organizations who didn't think it was an option, or people who had approached it with a lot of caution. And what the pandemic did for a lot of organizations was showing organizations that, people can actually work remotely and they can be productive even when working remotely. However, remote work is not without its challenges. That people are doing it or that organizations did it in the lockdown. What happened and what has happened since that period where it was compulsory? Now we're now in, some people will refer to now as post-pandemic, but the truth is that I think it's arguable. Some would say we're still in some kind of pandemic, but the important thing is that I think it's easier to say pre or post lockdown there. So what I want to share with us today is I'm going to be sharing some of the research particularly because this is an area of research for me. I'm actually working on a program on remote working. I'm doing some research on remote working at the moment. I want to bring all of us abreast. This is Stay Trendy. I want us to be abreast with, okay, what is the research saying about remote work? Especially there's a contextual issue here. There's a pre-pandemic period and there's a, pandemic period. So remote work as it was before is not actually, remote work as it is now. Another thing is that a lot of organizations are figuring it out. Nobody can say that, they have 100% or they really know, or they've totally figured it out. I think quite a number of us are making it up as we go. What are those best practices, for the organizations who are supposedly doing, quite a good job at it, or at least coping better, what are they doing? And then lastly, there's lots of policy issues. I'll be bringing in a guest speaker will be joining us, an employment law expert from Highbridge Solicitors, Mr. Bimbo Atilola, and he will be giving us that insight into the policy aspect. What are some of the legal implications or the legal framework that, that organizations should be considering, and maybe talk about some of the cases that have arisen, which are very peculiar to remote work or, this remote working era. So I'm going to I want to share some slides, not because this is the technical session, but I think it will help, it will just help the discussion better. And so I'm going to begin by, like I said, I'll share my screen. So just tell me what, I need to share my screen first. Can I get hosting right so I can share my screen? And then once I share my screen, yes, fantastic. And this is just to basically guide the discussion. Yeah, thank you. Please, can you tell me if you can see my screen? Sorry. Can you see my screen? I'll just check the chat to see what anyone is saying. Yeah, sure, fine. So yes, so today we're talking about remote work challenges and best practices. I'm going to share what I know, and we're going to have a discussion afterwards. And you can tell me what you know as well. Right, so we're going to just, not because we don't know what remote work is, but I'm a teacher, this is what I do. So I always see a lot of times I just like to make sure that everyone is the same page. So just explain it, maybe you have a different understanding of what it is or what we're talking about today. And then put a bit of context into it, because whether we like it or not, there is context. There is actually a pre-pandemic and a pandemic context, in the sense that the way remote work was practiced prior to the pandemic was different. A lot of people and researchers argue that it's a different context. And so even whatever research that had been done prior to the pandemic is not really, some researchers argue that it's not really relevant. So we need a lot of new research in this area. The other thing is, what are the challenges with remote work? But more importantly, before I even go into the challenges, I'm an advocate of remote work, but at the end of the day, I have to be objective. I'm also an HR professional, I'm an HR consultant, and I know that it comes with its challenges. So what are those challenges? But more importantly, rather than just focusing on the challenges, what are best practices or good practices? I couldn't say anything is best. Best is what works for your organization. And then if there's any, as we talk about best practices, I'm going to invite an employment law expert, because quite a number of the challenges are around policies. And I see that if organizations are able to, put these policies in place, I think it will go a long way. And then any questions, please feel free, send your questions. There's a Q&A. There's a chat as well. Please put your questions in this Q&A. All the questions in the Q&A will be answered as much as possible. Feel free to ask questions there, and as we get to it, we'll be there. Okay, thank you very much. Right, so let's, remote work is pretty much, I think all of us understand it. The key thing about remote work is you're not working at the location of an office. Right? You're working outside of the traditional office environment. So basically, it's based on the concept that work does not need to be done in a specific place to be executed successfully. So when we talk about remote work, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're speaking that the work is done outside of an office all the time. Is the fact that there's the possibility of work. The concept is that work does not have to be done in a specific place. Now, obviously, this brings practicality into it, because some work, by the nature of it, by the nature of some work, they have to be done in a particular place. Like, for example, if you're in a factory and you're producing something, you're in charge of a production line, you may have to, of course, there's systems that you can control remotely, but there's part of the work that needs to be done on site or in the office or in the factory. So that is not remote work. So remote work is work that is done outside of the traditional work environment. And so obviously this obviously means that some work would obviously be better for remote work than others. If a job cannot be done effectively and executed successfully on, off-site, then obviously it becomes a contender for office work or on-site work. But with the advent of technology, a lot of work that people argued that couldn't have been done successfully are being done successfully remotely. Now that we have remote work, so just a little bit of context is that, however, remote work has been, obviously its usage, its adoption is much more, with much more organizations than it was before. Because prior to the pandemic, a lot of organizations didn't, they didn't choose it as an option, but it was all to do with mostly to do with productivity and not believing that work could be done effectively for various reasons, which we will discuss. There are misconceptions, about remote work. So everybody has their own, ideas. Some people think, work cannot be done. It's a mindset. There are also challenges in the sense that, sometimes people feel that, and it's a genuine concern, that remote work may stifle career advancement, obviously, maybe because people that are seen would be more like in view. And, and some people have the notion that remote workers are not as productive. There are different schools of thought there. But more importantly, I want to look at, the benefits first, before we go into the challenges of remote work. The interesting thing about the benefits, a lot of the benefits are around either the organization or the workers. And so there are benefits for everyone. So for organizations who haven't really given it a thought, it's a good time to actually think. For a lot of organizations, there's actually an increase in productivity. So in as much as, maybe some organizations or some managers may be struggling with productivity issues, a lot of organizations currently report increased productivity for obvious reasons, like the fact that some workers are always on. I remember speaking to a particular CEO and I asked him, what's your, what's been your experience about remote work? Like, how do you think it has increased or, what are your views on that? He said, you know what, Adora? He said, the people who were productive, when we weren't working remotely, the people who were really productive, he says they're even more productive. But he said, Adora, the people who are faffing around, they are even faffing around more. That was the language he used. And I just laughed because, the truth is that it has increased productivity definitely for, a good number of workers. Notwithstanding, it doesn't mean that everyone is just as productive, but we must embrace that benefit that quite a number of people are working much longer hours because they can. They're keeping on all the, much more for longer hours. We can't run away from reduced real estate costs. A lot of organizations have reduced their real estate in terms of, if everyone is not going to be at work all the time, then we don't need all this real estate. We can do something with it. So we may give up some of our space, we may lease out some of our space, but a lot of organizations have changed their their needs for real estate. And if you know anything about real estate is a huge cost. So if anyone can reduce that cost, I think it goes, it definitely, it hits your bottom line, right there. So reduction of real estate costs, definitely. There's another one about reducing absenteeism, right? So firms who have been tracking their absentee records have reported that there have been reduced absentee rates. There's an argument for and against this, why this could happen. Of course, if you're working from home, you're less likely to report that you're ill, right? And you may, like people would typically take days off if they had malaria or if they have a flu. They wouldn't go into the office. But if you have a flu and you are working from home, you definitely can continue working. You might feel you can manage more because you're where you would have wanted to be to recover more quickly. So that's definitely a plus. Of course, like I said, the fewer overheads, I would already, imply that in the real estate costs. One of the biggest benefits that I've seen with remote work, and the research has reported, the biggest issues for a lot of organizations in this period is talent acquisition, talent management, access to talent, getting the right employees, getting, employees who fit culturally. The great thing is that remote work has offered a larger benefit, the access to talent. So prior to remote work, you typically, if you live in a traffic congested area or a major city, or your organization is in a city, one of the concerns is that you're worried about where people live. I know this was definitely a concern for me. And I know a lot of other HR people, employers and HR professionals who would be concerned when with employees that live far away. If you live in a busy place or a major city, it's always a concern where people live. Now, when you're working remotely, you don't have those concerns anymore because you have access to a larger pool of talent that you may never have had access to. So issues such as, like having to focus on people who live you don't have those issues anymore. So your pool of talent is much larger than an organization who is fully on site. Another thing is diversity and inclusion. This is a big issue right now. Of course, if you have a larger talent pool, then you have a larger base in terms of diversity. I can't mention inclusion in the sense that I can't mention it enough, because inclusion is one of the things that we're all driving for. And remote work allows us include more, much more people into our talent pool. Lots of working moms, lots of people living with disabilities can now be part of that access pool. And this was not possible. So I always tell people, there's some type of employees or some, demography of employees that, who may not have had that type of, opportunity, or may not have considered some jobs because they took them away from other maybe caring responsibilities or family responsibilities or location-specific responsibilities. This has given them, access to join the workforce. So I feel like, and I know that organizations that are really, are really benefiting from this. And then, of course, retention. Retention is an issue when we talk about. Yesterday I was speaking about talent management and retention. Is always a topical issue. People think about you can retain staff much more, when they work remotely. It doesn't mean, because right now people have more bandwidth, as long as they're not, all the disbenefits of, moving up and down or having to travel far, those are gone. So, we can actually have, so that access to talent, I feel, for professionals, employers, that's probably, for me, the biggest one. I've taken advantage of that because I don't have to worry where people live anymore, because I have access, not just access to talent, access to the best talents, because the world is your oyster now. And even if you don't go global, you can move locally and regionally much more than before. So the benefits for the employees, of course, if an employee, if employers are benefiting in terms of diversity, inclusion, retention, there is improved work-life balance for a lot of employees. People would argue, it goes, oh, you're always on, you're always working. But there's work-life balance covers different things. It covers you being able to have time for the things that you also want to have time for. I'm someone, for example, I work, I have small children. My children are upstairs right now. I'm working from home. Once I'm done, I'm going to, they're probably going to run in here. I've locked the door, but, the bottom line is I have that benefit. I can be with them. So it's not going to be an excuse. I'm not going to worry about, things that I would have worried about when I was, at the office. So improved work-life balance, migration of workers from one city to another. This is a great one. When you don't have to be in the city anymore. If you live in a major city, if you're in Nigeria, it's Lagos. If you're in the UK, it's London. If you're in the US, it's all those cities, New York, DC. You don't have to be there anymore. They come with their own issues and headaches, and they're so expensive to live in. People don't have to live in those expensive places. The house prices in London, for example, are like 3 to 4 times the house prices in the north. So if you have a remote work, you're going to be paying, if you're renting, you're paying less rent. If you're, so same thing with Lagos. You don't have to be in Lagos living in an area close to the island. You can live anywhere. And it's not such a concern anymore. So definitely, reducing those commuting times that caused a lot of people a lot of stress, all that is gone. Reduction in your travel expenses. People have, with all these inflated, energy crisis, utility crisis all over. I think people can do with a bit more money in their pockets. So there is me. I couldn't resist talking about the benefits. But one thing, I say this because, remote work is a reality. Some people are still arguing about whether or not come back to the office. We're having that kind of trend. Quite a number of organizations have called back their staff. They've said, come back. People are not really for different reasons. Some don't feel like the productivity is up, or it's culture, it's issues on culture and different things. However, one thing I keep saying, and this is based on the research I've done, and what I believe that will help all of us, is that remote work is a reality. Whether we want people to come back or we don't want people to come back, it's beyond the issue. It's our new reality for a lot of people. Sometimes some people complain about different generations. Right now, if you've done interviews, I do quite a bit of interviews of staff. If you interview people who are Gen Z, one of the first questions that they're going to ask is it remote and hybrid? If you also interview the younger millennials as well, you will get that question asked, is there a remote part of this work? Is there a hybrid? And I tell people, we need to be more understanding. And this is what I say about the different generations at work. Imagine somebody who started work in the pandemic. Quite a number of these young people, especially Gen Zs, they started work remotely. Their experience of work is very different, and that is what they know as work. So it's like normal for them. And even people like us who didn't start work like that, we've wanted some people, in other generations, we want that type of work because of the benefits. I know a lot of women, it's definitely beneficial for them, and men, but notwithstanding, everybody, it isn't for everybody. Some people actually don't like working remotely, and these are some of the issues that have come up in the research. Pre-pandemic, working from home was like for people who wanted to work from home. The lockdown during the pandemic, everyone had to work from home. Now, do we go back? Do we not go back? Those things. So, the bottom line is that the number of people who will work remotely, has increased. It has, more than doubled. Pre 2017, 2018, people were working remotely, even outside of, the country, in developed countries, was about 2%. Now the figures are like 50, 70%. I will work remotely at least once a week. So this is our reality, right? And imagine also, when we talk about talent, imagine how do you attract talents who are already enjoying the benefits of remote work to come and work in your organization who doesn't even offer that option. So those are some of the things that, we definitely would need to be looking at. But the bottom line is that it is the percentage of people that will be working remotely is going up. It's not going down. So very quickly, I'm going to move on to the challenges of remote work, and I'm going to explore some of the research done both locally and internationally. I always like to put context to things. There's some brilliant research out there, and at the end of this session, we will be sharing the slides so you can look at all the sources and read for yourself. Right, so what are some of the challenges of remote work? Now, a big part of the challenges of remote work, they actually come because of, they are based on the characteristics of remote work itself. Remote work is a particular type of work. It's not done in an office. It's usually done at home or somewhere else that is outside the office. By the very nature of that, then you don't have the support system that office work has. So big part of the challenges of remote work is based on the characteristics of remote work. Virtual work is characterized by, working alone, being able to manage yourself, having autonomy over your work, the way you carry it out. A lot of remote work is also characterized by some form of monitoring. And we will also, that's something that, I would love to hear people's opinion on. When I mean monitoring, you're either delivering, either your firm has installed some kind of, clocking system or, some kind of system around your work to ensure that the work is done. And workload is another reported thing, issue with remote work. It's the characteristic of remote work that people, especially when we don't have policies around timing of the remote work, a lot of remote workers have reported that remote work is characterized by more work. Now, this has comes with its other set of challenges. And, this is a particular research I like, because there's not a lot of research. That's the thing about it. There's not a lot of research on remote work since the pandemic. And that's a lot of where we want the research to come from. This particular research I'm looking at here is one that was done about effectively working remotely during this pandemic era. And a lot of the challenges that were reported were around, for people working remotely, were around procrastination of work because they work on their own. Sometimes they don't do work when they're supposed to, they procrastinate, right? And do it last minute, or ineffective communication. A lot of, for this particular study, which is a very good one, because and the reason why I'm using it is because I've seen a lot, and, it reports the same type of challenges. That communication is typically done online and is not as effective. Lots of workers agree that, face-to-face, you just can't beat face-to-face. So that the communication is not as effective, working remotely. And then the biggest of all, there's loneliness, of course, when you work by yourself. People report that social connectedness not being there. But the biggest challenge that was reported, in not just this survey or this research a lot, is work-home interference. And work-home interference comes in different forms, from, you're at home because people see you at home, or you don't have workplace, you don't have a workspace, an adequate workspace, or you're sharing workspace with other members of the family. You have people you're caring for at home at the same time, so they're interfering. There's lots of interference in the workplace. And I've seen that happen with people. This also covers issues around, poor maybe facilities generally, or can be heard. Can anyone just say, can you hear me? Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah, good, wonderful. So just before I went off, so one of the things that have come up that, more recently is discipline, self-discipline. And this was not something that ever came up before. So self-discipline has, come up as a major challenge. And I think anyone who is working with people, I think that self-discipline is a big issue, right? So that's based on the research. So just to summarize it, like I said, these slides will be shared. And then, you can also do your own research. But I'm just happy sharing this information with colleagues. Right. So moving on to that. Now, this is more local, this was a survey done by Danny Institute during the pandemic. Another one I like this because it's local. So sorry if you're not local in terms of, when I mean local, a lot of people here are from Nigeria. So this was done. And if you look at it, why I love local data is because the issues are different. If you see one of the top biggest challenge then, and this data may have slightly changed, was internet connectivity. So, this is like from the home front now, the setup, the infrastructure. So internet connectivity, keeping a regular schedule. This is work-home interference, I would say. Too many distractions at home. Look at the top three. Right. So if the data is telling us these things, right. And like this was done, in the peak of the coronavirus, but I still feel like it's very relevant now. But notice the top 5 things. I mean, then there was anxiety. Are people still anxious? I think if you look at the data, there's still a lot of anxiety. It may not be around the coronavirus, but generally mental health issues have been reported to have gone up. Is it that people are more aware they're using it? I think the pandemic left a lot of people bruised with different forms of mental health challenges, emotional challenges, let me put it that way. And look at the 5th, physical workspace. So when we look at these issues and we see what, communication obviously is, which is, you can relate to loneliness, not being able to communicate effectively with employees, social isolation, childcare, right? I don't have access to tools. Now, you see, the thing about data research is what we do with the data. It's not an end in itself. What do you do with the data? Like, what have we done? So if we know this, what have we done with what we know? That is the main point. If people, are we still just moving along and trying to, you understand, trying to roll with the punches and go with that. These are real concerns. So even looking at the international data, looking at the local data, the only thing I didn't see much of in the international data was infrastructure issues like connectivity and but they had issues like work-home interference, workspace issues. And I think it's even bigger here. It's even bigger for the younger generation because a lot of people who can work effectively from home have space to work from home. Not everyone has space. And I don't think we know enough that people, when you don't have space, I'm using an ergonomic chair. I had to get another one, right? Because, like it was really a challenge, having to sit down much more often than before. So these are challenges. And so looking at these challenges, what are we doing about them? Another challenge that I've seen, with remote work now, for those who are actually embracing it and doing the work, is tax and legal compliance issues now. Okay, some companies have embraced it, and people are working remotely, they're embracing the talent access, but what else is happening, right? So there's tax and legal compliance issues. some organizations are still grappling with establishing efficient processes. Remote work does not use office processes. And I think that's the challenge a lot of organizations, are having. It's not the same process. The way you onboard, for example, remotely is not the way you onboard as physical, but a lot of us are trying to convert our physical ways to our remote work ways, and it doesn't work. It's a different system. It's done differently. Performance management is different when it's for remote work. And onboarding recruitment is different when it's done remotely. These processes, these key processes that a lot of us were used to and have, especially as practitioners, we've done it perfectly on site. The bad news is that you can't do it perfectly using the same method, right? It's just like I was talking to clients and I was asking them whether they were automated, like maybe their performance management system was automated. And they said, they honestly, let me be honest with you, they said, we've basically just uploaded the form. I said, that's a first step, uploaded the form. So the form we used to do manually, printed, we've just uploaded it now. So it's online. And I'm like, I wish it was that simple, but it's not. It's not just about converting, an analog system to digital. Once you convert something to digital, the way it's done largely changes. So that's those are some of the other challenges are tracking technology. This is one that is not popular. I've been looking around and seeing employee opinion on tracking. It's not popular, but organizations have always done it. Organizations who started working remotely pre-pandemic, they've always done it. And what is the tracking? It's about monitoring. But it's about systems, right? Especially with organizations that have policies on time. So if you're going to have a policy around time that staff are still going to work 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, then a lot of organizations feel the need to track activity within those hours to ensure that work is done. People are saying, whatever I do with my time is not, but hey, employees that have policies around time use tracking technology. Other issues are around, communication and workload. This is a KPMG survey, so all the links to the surveys and the research I've put here, they're all available, and you can have a look at them and see them. So just some things, maybe just for discussion's sake, like quite a number of these international organizations calling people back to office. People are fighting not to go back to the office. It's not just international organizations, local have, the same issue in different ways, where, organizations are saying, come back. Hybrid it seems to be very popular now. But the issue with hybrid is that there are like at least 6 different ways of hybrid. Hybrid is not, everyone agrees that, some form of work from home, work in the office is good, but a lot of people haven't figured out how exactly to implement hybrid. And these are some of the issues I see constantly come up with. How do we implement hybrid? Do we do 2 days a week? Do we do 3 days a week? Do we do 4 days a week? Some of the best advice I've gone there is, rather than focus on how many times people come to the office, why not consider what activities should people come to the office for? That's something worth considering. Some of the field, from the research I've been doing and some of the discussions, I think it's a good thing. So with some organizations, you can decide these activities are done on site, and these rather than, because when you say something is flexible, and at the same time you say you must come on Monday or you must come on Tuesday, do we just come? Are we just coming for coming's sake? Can we not come? I don't think we should focus on coming to the office for the sake of it. We should come because there's something, that we need to do in the office. If it's not, if we can't do our best work in the office for a lot of people who have embraced it, then we shouldn't just tell people to come to work for the sake of it. Maybe we can come to work because, there is a reason to come to work that is, and those reasons is team get-togethers are good enough reasons. That's a good and I've seen quite a number of organizations, strategy sessions, team meetings, they're good enough reasons. Another thing I've noticed is, you know, remote work, and this I guess has to do with the benefits, because the companies who embrace remote work obviously are more flexible. I mean, a couple of weeks ago there was this whole issue on Tesla calling back their employees, and I think it was all over LinkedIn, and that all staff should come back. And it was from Elon Musk, and it was leaked. And it was funny because like the next day I saw lots of emails from Microsoft saying, hey, in Microsoft, we work flexibly and we're happy to employ any Tesla staff who would like to go, So companies access to talent pool as well. If talent is requiring want to work remotely, then you need to consider some of the implications. Yeah. So I think some of the best practices, I'm happy for some of us to share our best practices, but one of the things I've learned in this period is definitely that communication is very key, and anyone not using a tool, a tool that promotes, helps with communication might be losing out. Definitely, improving communication, convening for communication purposes or team purposes. We need to also change our processes, find new ways to work, find, ways to enhance engagement despite the challenges of remote work, right? And then some old norms, we just really have to do away with them because they really don't work for remote work. Even just managing people, trust is a big factor now. We have to trust people to do the work. And if they're not doing the work, then you have policies in place for non-performance of work, Right now, one of the good practices is to continue to track, your team development and well-being. Well-being is such a big issue now. So we need to find ways to ensure that, and put in policies that will help. Be more task oriented, not necessarily time oriented. This one is one that is still argued. A lot of people say, it's focus with remote work, want to focus on deliverables and not necessarily when people do the work. But we must be very clear. I think that's one of the things that everybody agrees. You need to be much clearer on the deliverables now than ever, because it's just a different form of working. So that is very key. Even organizations, what I'm seeing is meeting policies. They're having policies on meetings, because one thing I noticed during this whole time and during this, especially this remote working time, is there just too many meetings. Meetings from morning till night, back to back. When is the work going to be done if we're always meeting, Zooming and everything? So you see that, like I see this Citigroup bank Zoom calls, organizations have come up with policies around when calls, when Zoom calls can be done, and encouraging people to avoid being Zoomified, if there's such a word, right? One of the other things I will say is that we need to really revisit employee rewards and benefits. We need to definitely be more creative around that work, understanding that flexibility and remote work offers some very real benefits and rewards for certain types of talent. We need to obviously have a look at mental health issues. And I think these are things I've already talked about. Know that there's, things are just going to be different. If you still have people struggling, with work and infrastructure, we really need to think about what to do about connectivity issues. If people are still having them, infrastructure, workspace, a lot of organizations I know, let me not say a lot, some organizations were able to provide some of those infrastructural needs, very early on, making sure that people are set up to work, from home, more at least, ensure that they have the tools and as much as they can. You can't necessarily give people houses but at least, ensuring that you support that part. And then of course, establishing social connections. A big part of an issue is enhancing engagement in remote workers now. Like some people, if remote work is here to stay, then engagement on site and in the office is very different from engagement off site. How do you enhance engagement in remote work? So these are some of the challenges and the issues that organizations will have now. Those engagement strategies that were developed for on-site, they may not work for remotes. So we need to have, we need to do more around engagement, around remote working, understanding the characteristics of remote working and how we may enhance engagement in remote workers. And, these might come up very handy for us. Okay. So before, at this point, I want to take questions. I also want to invite, a guest speaker here to join me now to talk about remote work policies. He's an expert his name is Bimbo Atitolola. Some people here might know him. He's an expert in employment law. And whether we like it or not, remote work has come with its own issues, its own challenges, and there are policy and employment law related areas around that. So I want to invite him now, and I want to hear from him expert-wise, and then at the same time take some of the questions that maybe I can only take questions in the chat. It will be difficult to take questions, in the Q&A. Because the chat is moving, it keeps moving, so I can't really keep up with if there are any questions. So please, can people ask any questions that they have in the Q&A section, and then we can take it from there. So I'm going to invite Mr. Bimbo now. I just want to make sure that he's, and then So thank you, and then we'll continue with any other information later. So I'm going to stop the share. Right. So let me see. Okay. So I want, it would be nice to hear from everyone, I hope insights that I shared. This is an area that I'm currently enjoying researching, and it's always nice to share what one is learning with colleagues and people alike. What are the challenges you have, and how have you been able to tackle them, or how are you working, with them? Is Bimbo here? I think he should be here. So, yeah, can I hear from anyone? Thank you. Yeah, someone is saying that it's been refreshing. Questions, please, comments, please feel free to be I haven't seen just waiting. Okay, I see Bimbo. Okay, Bimbo, your video. Let me have your video on. So we take questions. Any questions here now? Questions, comments? Right. Okay. So, yeah, someone asked now, would you mind sharing examples of activities or initiatives to engage remote staff, especially if they are from different nationalities? How do we promote inclusion in this period? I think that's a very interesting question. One thing I will say is that definitely, like I said, the way we work, it's not the same way. We just have to do different activities. If you, global understanding, cultural understanding is even much more important now. When you're working with people from other cultures, it's very important that we learn their culture. When we're working with a diverse team, it's very important that we learn, we know more about our colleagues. Working a diverse team is a fantastic option. If you're doing online activities, you make them interesting. Some of these online activities, we can't help it. But they have to be scheduled. So I've heard of people doing scheduled sessions with their teams, even maybe changing the agenda, like incorporating some activities into the agenda of their team meetings to get people involved. getting to know people offline. There's something that people, I also tell people, in as much as you have team discussions, one-on-ones are very good. They are, in fact, very, very good discussions. Catch up with people one-on-one. Those are usually better discussions than, I know it takes more time, but I think any team lead knows that one-on-one discussions usually are generally much more effective than discussions that, are just is happening with Bimbo. Yeah. Yeah, one-on-one discussions are definitely more productive. Okay, right. So I'm taking the questions in the Q&A. I'm not really sure why Bimbo is not online. Okay, so someone says, okay, how does the interview and selection process go for remote and hybrid? Is it purely for IT savvy person? Oh, no, not at all. Lots of people are being hired remotely without any. Right. Okay. So, lots of people are being hired remotely. They're hired. The interviews are done online. We don't need to have that. We don't need to. People don't need to be seen. So, yes, recruitment and onboarding is done very successfully online, especially for remote workers. You're not going to see them. So, I mean, you can definitely conclude the process offline. Someone said, can we shed more light on practical employee benefits for remote workers? I think people need to understand that working remotely is a benefit in itself. Doesn't mean that there are no other benefits, but definitely that flexibility in itself, is definitely, is definitely something that we encourage. So a lot of times, for the remote workers, I mean, what kind of benefits can you give them? Definitely, I mean, some organizations, depending on the organization, you have different types of contracts for remote work. So are they contingent staff? Are they full-time employees? Some people will send packages to them before they start work, their package. It could include their laptop, the gadgets that they have, those kind of things. So, I mean, there are different ways that and then of course, have, would I say, engagement strategies for remote workers, make your activities more interesting, come up with benefits, maybe even meetups at certain times of the year and things like that, but definitely, notwithstanding, there's always policies around how to work more effectively remotely. Right, so I've seen a question on, do companies have specific training tailored to helping employees? Yes, there is specific training. Lots of organizations, one of the first things that the best organizations did was to equip staff and equip managers on how to work better remotely. So definitely, yeah. Someone is saying, I refer to cultures like the civil service where remote work will require a near total overhaul of mindsets. Yes, but that training is available, either as customized or, open programs. Working remotely is definitely a training program because it's a shift of mindset. I remember that one of the challenges I mentioned with remote work is self-discipline. So people who can't work effectively, discipline, who have discipline issues will struggle to work remotely. How do you encourage employees to participate in engagements activities on site while they work remotely? And this is where policy comes into place. What are your policies on site when people are working remotely? I mean, if, for example, you have meetups that are quarterly or once a month, or if there are activities that are maybe work related, like a team meeting or a strategy session, I would think that, the employees have to come anyway. But if it's not compulsory, then it's obviously, if it's not mandatory, I mean, people will have options. I mean, they may not appear? How do you encourage them to participate? Of course, if they're on site, then I want to believe that, that process has to be facilitated while they're there. But if they are not even there in the first place, then obviously that poses another set of challenges. But I think that, when it comes to engagement, generally, we need to understand what actually causes disengagement in the first place, especially around remote work. What makes remote workers feel disengaged? And in fact, you have to have a good understanding of engagement in the first place. What is engagement? Engagement is when people are engaged, they go the extra mile. You understand? They're in a state of flow in terms of work. They're vested in the work emotionally. And there is also a vesting in terms of, how they feel about the organization as well. So what makes somebody disengaged? I think that's a real, and what particularly makes a remote worker disengaged? If we think about normal staff on site, then when you're even working alone, there's still similar issues to leadership. There's similar, what could cause disengagement? Leadership, team leadership would definitely be a big one. So even more than ever, we need to equip our team leads with the skills to work, and manage their teams more remotely. So issues such as, the work environment, the culture, they still affect remote workers, right? But still bearing in mind that, we also need to look at competence level of remote workers. Self-discipline is a big issue that has come up in the research. So when you're also recruiting, you need to consider that, you want people who are quite disciplined. Yeah. Yes, so I think those are the questions I see. How do you do appraisal for remote work? Very interesting one. It depends on your appraisal system. But remember that you may have to change, you probably have to change however you are managing performance for remote workers. With remote workers, you have to be much clearer on deliverables, and you need to have systems. Systems will always save the day. Technology will save the day. What you were doing on paper, when you can't see someone, you need to use tools, right? So a good performance management system that can be logged into is obviously much better, where you capture people's objectives and it can be monitored by the system. That's a better, tool than how you used to do it before, where they would fill their form and things like that. So remote work works hand in hand with technology because it's enhanced and it's supported by technology. So the processes, they work better when they are, they have good technology supports. It's very difficult to use analog methods to manage digital digital processes or activities. Yeah, how can we best deal with employees who abandon their responsibilities because they're working remotely? And yes, but okay, someone is saying, I called Bimbo. I've just seen a message saying he's on the type. We called him, I've been waiting for him. And I'm only speaking because I wasn't sure where he was. Can we have Bimbo? I'm not, on, please. So I haven't seen his screen or anything on. I thought he would be. I did call him. I think it's like 10, 15 minutes now. Yes. So Bimbo, are you here now?
Yes, I'm here.
Really sure, because I'm just seeing the message and I've been
very much here.
Calling. I was trying to stop. Yeah, so we didn't see your video. I asked for your video to be on,
Please let them on it from their side. I understand that the coordinator, the host, has to do that. I've requested for that, please.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that. So it's not me. I'm not the host. So please can his video, because I think I've been making requests, but I was just thinking we're having challenges. So I was just trying to fill up. So please, yeah, so Bimbo, while we're waiting for that, thank you. Oh, fantastic. You're online, Bimbo.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Adora. That was a very.
I've been waiting for you. I thought you had challenges. You want to.
What?
Yeah.
What do you say?
I thought you had challenges, so I didn't want to, Okay.
That was a
fantastic. So I want to talk
that was a very beautiful presentation. I mean, I was stick to my iPad for the last an hour, digesting your very beautiful slide presentation. Quite deep and an exciting experience in the last 1 year, I tell you.
Thank you. Can you tell us about policies wise, what are the implications legally in terms of remote working? What is new, what has come up, and what should we be looking out for now?
Yes, thank you very much, Adora. As we all know, remote work has become the preferred HR model globally today, and very quite interesting because when the remote work idea became popular in March 2020 because of the COVID-19 lockdown, the world of work thought that remote work was a temporary arrangement in response to the challenges of the COVID-19, because we all had to work from home. But what we all thought was a temporary arrangement in response to COVID-19 has interestingly become the preferred choice of work in today's world of work. And you have identified the various factors that have contributed to the increasing use of remote work at workplaces, including the benefits to companies and to organizations and to employees themselves. I'm particularly happy about the point that you made, that it has promoted diversity and inclusion, because in today's world of work, even as a local company, you can now have expatriates resident in different jurisdictions working for you, and yet resident in different jurisdictions. So working mothers, disabled people can now effectively work. But beyond that, what we have seen is that every organization want to do some form of remote work, either 100% or an hybrid of both remote and physical. But what we have seen is that many don't have suitable policy to govern their remote work practice. And as we are going to see very shortly in my presentation, there are a lot of legal issues that are associated with that work model, which cannot be adequately addressed without having a standard remote work policy put in place. And this policy can be either as a standalone policy, which a lot of organizations have done as a standalone policy, which will now be integrated into the general HR framework, or you have a chapter in your employee handbook, you amend and have a chapter in your employee handbook where you now, insert your remote work policy. Whichever option that you prefer, what is important is that we must have a robust policy in place to address all the legal concerns, some of which I will be looking at in this class. The first I would like to look at is the issue of working hours. For physical work, most policies have defined your working hours. Traditionally, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we know that except you want to work overtime, which in some organizations and depending on your level may attract overtime pay, but at senior level it doesn't. You know your regular work time. You may, however, decide to do overtime either on your own volition or at the request of the company, which may attract some extra pay. But the challenge here is that since the beginning of the remote work practice in Nigeria, for instance, we now see a situation, an assumption by line managers and management staff that your working hours has become unlimited. So, and that is why companies can now fix meetings for 9 p.m. A colleague of mine told me that she had to endure multiple meetings starting from 8 a.m. and sometimes ends by as late as 11 p.m., all in the name of remote work. And the assumption is that maybe you are in your house, so why not? You can take your lunch, take your dinner. After your dinner, you come back to work, and let's have this. Then line managers begin to send emails to you by 7:30 p.m., 8:30 p.m., and expect you to respond. And it can be a serious issue. Oh, Shola, didn't you see my email I sent you? Please, it's quite urgent. I need that proposal. We need to send it in. And that was 7:30. A request you could not have made pre-COVID-19, because at that time I will be commuting home. So I won't be with my laptop. And if I get home by 9:30, of course I go to bed. You don't start calling me or sending me email. So you expect that if you send an email at that particular time, the expectation then was that you are going to attend to it the following morning. But now, because of absence of very strong policies, line managers now abuse the working hours, and employees are now asserting their rights to say, are there going to be overtime pay? Because working remotely does not mean working throughout the day. So again, and like Adora mentioned, when we talk of remote work, we have to define our deliverables and the measurement. Is it measured as per working hours or as per deliverables? Some management experts believe that what is important is your deliverables, and that it is relevant whether you comply with the working hours or not. That will depend on individual organization, including your job roles. For instance, if you are a customer service, you must be at your desk to attend to phone calls and inquiries. You can't say it's about deliverables. And so in a day, I can attend to all the requests that have been made in the last 1 week after I've delivered. No, that is not going to work. So the policy must define the model. Is it working hours based? And what are the rules of engagement if I'm going to work beyond the agreed time frame? And it's going to be based on your deliverables. Then the next issue we'll be looking here is the issue of definition of remote locations. It's quite important, very, very important. When we talk about remote work, it implies working from other locations other than your physical office. And this means remote locations can be your home, can be an hotel, and can be other places where one can work from. But for some reasons, from some legal issues, including confidentiality reasons, including issues of vicarious liability. Vicarious liability in law means the liability of an employer for the wrongful acts of his employees. Also for reasons of compensation for injury in the course of employment. These are serious legal issues which require that we define what are the remote work, acceptable remote work locations within the meaning and contemplation of our policy. And I will explain this further. Now, if you don't define what is acceptable remote work locations under your policy, then you are exposed to myriad of legal risks, including liability. The first is that means your employee can take your laptop and your documents to any location of his or her choice and call it remote work. And this will include hotel premises, this will include poolside, this will include a friend's house, a boyfriend's house, a girlfriend's house, parents' house, and including outside jurisdiction. I will come to that. Whether during remote work, whether you are allowed to leave the country of principal engagement without the leave, permission, or consent, or knowledge at least of the employer. I will address that shortly. But let me go back to the issue of location. If location is not defined, the implication is that the employee is at liberty to take your work at any remote locations and deliver your work, and that has implications for confidentiality. We have seen situations where family, friends, lovers, and relations work in different organizations that are competitors. So if I take my work tool to a location where my family friends are, where a girlfriend is, or even my wife works with a competitor, that means I can compromise the confidentiality, including trade secrets of my organization, sometimes inadvertently. Then who has access to your remote work tools? If the tools is provided by the employer, which we strongly recommend, then there must be a rule that it is only you that can access it, and on no account you share your password with anyone. But whether you can dictate that rules, where I'm the one providing the laptop and other work tools, is debatable. Secondly, if there is no proper definition of the remote work location, in law, employer is liable to compensate an employee for injury or death sustained in the course of employment. And as we know, remote work is an extension of the workplace in the eyes of the law, meaning that if an employee who sits down on his chair while working remotely, the chair suddenly collapses or maybe suffers electric shock while working on the laptop, that is injury in the course of employment. That liability of the employer cannot be debated in that circumstance. It is straightforward. But it becomes complex where the injury is sustained in an hotel or in other alleged remote work locations. Because it's going to be my words against yours now. Where did you sustain this injury? I was in an hotel where I was attending to your work. I was in a friend's house who gave me a room where I attended to your work. So that means liability can be at large, because any location that I claim to be doing your work become the remote work location for the purpose of compensation for liability for injury sustained in the employment. But if the acceptable remote work locations have been defined in the remote work policy, if you sustain injury outside any of those acceptable locations, then it is an injury sustained while you are on the frolic of your own, not an injury sustained in the course of employment. But without a policy that defines that, then there will be a lot of issues. Now, let me talk about remote location on international basis. And there are interesting examples here. If I'm engaged to work for Kendall Consulting as their labor and employment law consultant, for instance, on remote basis, and I'm to do my deliverables, and my working hours is 9 to 6 on an agreed fees. And I'm a full-time employee. I'm not a consultant, full-time employee, but we agree to work on remote basis, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And Adora has paid me so much, you know, she can afford it. Kendall is quite big. And the issue has arisen. Can I live for UK and continue my work without informing you? And there are a lot of issues that will arise from it, because most times remote work policy recognizes the prerogative of the employer to recall you back to work physically when the need arises. Some policies say that, notwithstanding this, when the need arises, you may be invited back at short notice. Now, if the policy is silent on that, and I left for UK, and I started doing my deliverables, of course, you wouldn't know where I am, and it's not important to you, because what is important is that I do my working hours. That has implication for insurance. Remember, most employers have workmen compensation insurance for their employees, which covers injuries. Now, in the insurance form that that was completed by Kendall to determine liability. The insurance company will have asked Kendall whether they have offices in London and US, and Kendall will probably say we don't have offices in London and US. Our location is in Nigeria. So our premium should be computed based on people who are resident and who work in Nigeria. And of course, the scope of liability determines premium that you pay to insurance company. And of course, Kendall went ahead and signed an insurance company, an insurance policy, workmen commercial insurance policy for all his workers, including myself. So while at Miami, and I sustain an injury, or I die there, for instance, God forbid. Now, the issue is this. Kendall will write their insurance company to say, look, we have liability here for injury sustained in the course of employment in Miami. And the insurance guy will open their policy and say, we are sorry, we are not liable because that did not occur within the authorized workplace recognized by this policy. But I will tell you that no, I'm at work. The liability of an employer for injury sustained in the course of employment cannot be limited by the kind of policy you have chosen to pick for me. That liability subsists provided the injury or death occurs in the course of employment. So that is a potential legal issue which you may have to submit to the jurisdiction of the National Industrial Court to determine whether the workplace extends to overseas. But without a policy statement on that, we document with the court interpret. So the court will most likely hold that Kendall Consulting is liable for that injury. You can see that risk.
Yeah. Thank you, Bimbo, because you're really answering the questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A. One question that has come up is around, okay, what about overseas? Like some companies allow you work from anywhere. You know, what are the legal implications of staff working overseas in terms of what are the legal? Yeah.
Some of the issues I will be discussing subsequently will address that. Indeed, the next issue I will be addressing is conflict of laws for remote employees that are overseas. Conflict of laws. For instance, if Kendall has agreed to retain remote workers from different parts of the world, including Europe and America, and Asia and Africa, and it is understood that they are going to work on remote basis, they will not come to Nigeria. Even Nigeria is the parent company where Kendall is registered, but they will work in their respective locations. The first issue is that if there is a dispute between parties, which court has jurisdiction and which law applies. So remote work contract must define what we call dispute resolution forum and the governing law and jurisdiction. You will be saying, I'm a Nigerian company. If you want to sue me, come to National Industrial Court. They will tell you that under their laws, jurisdiction is vested on the court where the employee is resident. So I'm resident in London. Please come to London. I can sue you in London and you have to defend it. Otherwise, I get judgment against you, which I can enforce against you in Nigeria. That is a jurisdictional issue. Second is the governing law. Which law governs the contract if there is a dispute? Is it Nigerian law? Is it English law? Is it American law? Is it Texas law? Or is it Indian law if the person is resident in India? Perhaps more important is the question of liability for personal income taxation. Every employee under Nigerian law, whether you are remote, whether you are casual or you are contract, you are liable to pay personal income tax under the Personal Income Tax Act of Nigeria of 2011 as amended. Under the Nigerian personal income tax laws, what determines the authority or the state where you pay the personal income tax to is where the employee is resident. So on domestic basis, even if you are within Nigeria doing your remote work, the issue will arise where will Kendall remit your personal income tax, which it has deducted? Will it be to Lagos Inland Revenue Service or Ogun State Inland Revenue Service if you are resident and you are working remotely from Abeokuta or from Mowe or from Ofada, which are all within Ogun State jurisdiction? If Kendo does not seek appropriate legal advice and tax advice, and he remits to Lagos State Inland Revenue Service, for instance, and during a tax audit or investigation, Ogun State Inland Revenue Service discovers that those employees are resident within its jurisdiction, then Ogun State will send you a tax assessment asking you to pay. And remember, every employer has the duty and obligation to deduct personal income tax and remit to appropriate tax authority. So if you remit to a wrong authority, the right authority is entitled to approach you and you may be liable to pay again. That is even at local. Yes.
Yeah, I'm reading the questions that are coming up. You know, a lot of people know that, especially in the tech space, you know, lots of people are hiring from Africa. Lots of people are working for, you know, companies abroad now. How are those managed? Because people are given, I mean, what kind of contracts? We could argue that they are under different, everybody doesn't have to be under an employee contract, right?
Yes.
Because that's a difference. So is this what they're doing? I mean, are they using different?
Now, you see, contract can take different forms.
Yeah.
A person may be employed as an employee under regular employment, even though on remote basis. It could be a consultancy agreement, but to be delivered on remote basis, in which case you are not an employee, but a consultant, and in which case personal income tax has no application. What applies is the withholding tax.
Yeah, if it's
including value-added tax, because it has become services now.
Yes.
It's no longer employment. So withholding tax and value-added tax will arise. And remember, there will also be issue as to which jurisdiction to pay it into. You see, the country of residence of the remote employee or the country of the company where the services is being rendered to, or where the services is being consumed. So what most employers have done to manage this conflict of law situation, they do an arrangement where it is based on deliverables, not working hours, in which it is strictly a consultancy agreement where they identify your deliverables and when to deliver and what to deliver. That is easier managed. But if you go by, you can also go by on working hours, in which case it becomes a part-time employment, and of course, varied employment laws will apply.
Yeah.
Which has no application to consultancy. Labor and employment laws applies to contract of employment, not to consultancy arrangement. So if Kendo retains hybrid solicitors as their legal partner to provide legal support to Kendo operations, that is a consultancy agreement. What Kendo does is to send me policies to review, policies to design, and tell me when they will need it. And for every services, it could be that we have agreed on annual retainership fees to be paid, or it could be that it is on as it come basis. That has no relation with personal income taxation, nothing like that. What will come to play is value-added taxes and withholding tax, which the contract itself can determine, can define in accordance with the choice of law principles that applies.
Okay, so I just want to maybe merge some of the questions together because of time, because we're just we're running out of time. This comes up a lot about tax with other countries. How are they managing it? And I think I would like to hear your perspective on it. I know that, for example, you know, in the UK, once you're resident in the UK, you need to pay tax in the UK. So if somebody left, you know, Nigeria, for example, and moves to the UK, you know, and we're still working for a Nigerian company, as long as you're resident, you need to pay taxes in at least I know in the UK,
Absolutely.
you need to pay taxes there. And I've seen a few companies in Nigeria who are now, of course, allowing their staff work from anywhere, but in their policies are clear that they cannot work for more than, I think I've seen 3 to 3, the days are clear for, you know, 3 or 4 months. So you have to be back, otherwise you become a resident of another country, and that's a different issue. Can you shed light on that? That's what I know some companies are doing, with regards.
That's true.
Yeah.
Adora, you are absolutely right, and I will explain. You see, different countries have their provisions on the number of days you will have been resident in a jurisdiction before you become what is called tax resident. You may be resident and not tax resident.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, it is 380 something. I can confirm it's 380 something days.
Yeah.
Meaning that once you are an expatriate and you have resided in Nigeria for 360 something days within the year, not 360, it's 180 something.
Yeah.
180 something days.
Yes.
We have 365 days in a.
183.
I think Nigeria is 183.
Yes, like that.
Or thereabout. I can confirm that. So different countries have their different provisions on the number of days that you'll be resident, that you'll be deemed to be tax resident for the purpose of liability for personal income tax. So the point I'm making here is that, like the example you have given, companies have studied the tax laws and say, look, you better come here within so days, otherwise you become tax resident and will be liable
exactly
tax by there. So they call it tax in tax world, they call it tax planning. Tax planning are arrangements you put in place which are lawful arrangements to escape tax liabilities under different laws. So if you know that in Nigeria, or let's say in UK, it's 100 days. For instance, I'm not saying that's the number of days. And when you have done 90, then you come to Nigeria, you break it, then you break. So tax experts have also put in place different work arrangements that protect you against double taxation.
Yeah.
Let me also mention that Nigeria has what they call double taxation treaty with a lot of countries where they have a reciprocal obligations not to tax you in their own jurisdiction once you can show that you have been taxed under the other jurisdiction. That come under what we call double taxation treaty, which Nigeria has signed with several other countries. So if your state of residence, your country of residence is among those countries where Nigeria has that double tax treaty with, then you will be saved from the rigor of double taxation.
So would that mean that, Bimbo, your company will stop taxing you so that you can pay tax abroad, for example, if there was a relation, that kind of tax treaty?
Absolutely. If there is a double taxation agreement,
you pay your gross
the essence of double taxation treaty is to prevent double taxation. So they set up rules that ensure that once you pay tax in jurisdiction A, you will not be asked to pay tax on the same income in jurisdiction B. But if there is no such, if you are resident in a country where Nigeria has no such treaty, then tax experts will advise how best to structure your working arrangement to ensure that you are saved from the rigor of double taxation.
That's fantastic.
For instance, the last time I checked, I know that Nigeria does not have that treaty with America.
No, America, wherever you are, you have to pay tax. As long as you're an American citizen, you must pay tax. That's American law. And I think people need to know things like that, because you can't also just plead ignorance. Like even for the UK, I just found out that, if you're home or if you own a house, even if you're renting it out and you're not resident, you should pay tax. And a lot of people don't know because they just think, I'm not resident, I'm not a UK citizen. Yeah, but everybody if you own a house, you are liable to pay tax, whether you're a citizen or not. So that, countries have these nuances. Because of time, I think we just have to wrap up. I must say that, you delivered as expected, and, I'm sure I can just read in the chat.
But Adora, before you leave, please one more thing, and I won't be happy if I don't discuss it.
Yes.
Privacy issues.
Okay.
Privacy issues. When an employer provides you your remote work tools like laptops,
yes, yes,
employers now want to put in place some monitoring system,
yes, yes,
including the time you clock in and the time you clock out, including some camera system that can actually capture you. And that has raised issues of fundamental human rights to privacy, which is guaranteed by the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is an issue. If you are going to do that, then your remote work policy must recognize it. Employees must accept it, and they must be informed. Otherwise, you may be liable for breach of their right to privacy. So thank you, Adora.
Thank you very much, Bimbo. And I just want to say big thank you to you. I mean, I see the comments. Everybody definitely really enjoyed this, the session. I think it's obvious to everyone that you are an expert in this area, and not just that you're an expert, but that you're very passionate about this area. And of course, I'm sure everybody can see the benefits. So as we wrap up, please, people, give him kudos there. I'm seeing the hands clapping. People are thanking you.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, thank you, Bimbo. We'll definitely be calling you again because I know I'm going to be doing a lot of these sessions on employment. So thank you very much again, Bimbo. And just to wrap up before we go, I just want to tell everyone here, please just stay trendy. Keep keep looking out for our emails, our sessions. We're here for the HR community where, you may be familiar with our boot camps. If you're not familiar with our boot camps, we have our accelerator programs, our regular boot camps as customized programs or open programs. Please look out for. We also have new training programs around Agile HR. We've updated our HR bootcamp curriculum with, up-to-date stuff like this around the now of work, managing remote work teams. So please, be open. When you see our emails, open our emails and sign up for our programs. And without further ado, I just want to say thank you to everyone and enjoy the rest of your time and look forward to our next, in 1 month, we'll be doing another session. Look forward to our emails and please attend as usual. Thank you very